Another day, squat's not going my way. Another day of news. Natasha Singer, New York Times. Amazon agrees to pay $25 million to settle FTC and DOJ charges over the company keeping Alexa voice records and geolocation data collected from children for years. Related, Bloomberg. Amazon agrees to pay $5.8 million fine to settle FTC allegations that Ring gave employees and third-party contractors full access to every customer video until 2017. The idea that you could report this story and not have in the headline a very basic calculation about what percentage of Amazon's operating revenue or profit these fines represent. Does anybody think that a $25 million fine levied against a business the size of Amazon's is going to incentivize the company to change its behavior? Mark Gurman, Bloomberg. Sources: Apple is testing two high-end Macs, one with an M2 Max and the other with an unannounced M2 Ultra SoC, offering 60 graphics cores and up to 192 gigabytes of RAM. The saga of the Mac Pro continues. I'm not sure at this point if it will ever stop. The opportunity is to have a Halo product, right? That's the aspirational computer for everyone who still aspires to have the biggest, baddest computing machine on the block. Will it be useful for some slice of applications? I have no doubt. What's up? But aside from that, what will be interesting to see is whether Apple is able, by the time they ship the Mac Pro, or at least announce it, whether it will have been engineered to be useful in what is obviously the most exciting field in computer science, dare I say, building, training, designing large language models and other forms of AI. If they can deliver a machine that is clearly well suited to those tasks, probably be quite the success. If, on the other hand, they deliver something that is just a bigger, faster, cooler way to do all the things you can do with every other Mac that already exists. Look, we're going to produce VR environments, or we're going to produce major Hollywood blockbusters. Like, I'm not sure those use cases get people as excited these days, but maybe we'll find out next week. Jason Schreier, Bloomberg. After Microsoft paid $7.5 billion for ZeniMax in 2020, sources detail development issues for Redfall, one of the worst reviewed games in 2023 and Xbox's latest misfire. This could be an interesting story if you're following the game narrative closely. There's been a tremendous amount of attention on Microsoft's desire to acquire Activision. I've spoken about that at length. The other side of it, though, is if that deal goes through and you get even more consolidation in the market of studios which produce video games, the ability for Microsoft to produce successful game after successful game after successful game, that is the story that hasn't got as much attention and is arguably more important, right? In contrast, we were talking last week about Nintendo. They take far fewer swings at the pitch, but they tend to sort of get more for every time that they connect with the ball, to allow for that metaphor. So I don't know how many misfires Xbox Games Studios and Microsoft Gaming more broadly have had in recent past, because I don't follow it that closely. But I don't know. Now I'm kind of curious to see what Redfall is about, because the worst reviewed game of 2023 is a rare honor. Aisha Malik, TechCrunch. Instagram details ranking content in feed, stories, reels, and more, and is testing more user controls, including an, quote, interested button for recommended posts. In the social media Highlander bucket, I continue to believe that we will wind up, whether it's 5 years or 10 years from now, with incredibly small number of social media tools of size, of consequence, rather. Instagram's evolution into, well, over time, is one of the more interesting stories there. I have a very close friend who is a member of a social cycling club, and they missed the notification that a particular ride had been canceled because the organizers communicated that the ride would be canceled in their Instagram story and only there. And my understanding is that content on Instagram stories is only alive for a fixed period of time. I haven't used Instagram in years, so I'm not particularly familiar with exactly how long. I think it's 24 hours, something like that. But they did that more than 24 hours before the ride was set to occur. And that to me is this interesting microcosm of what happens when your app that was designed to do a very particular thing grows and grows and grows until it does a tremendously wider variety of things. There's a significant design challenge there, and even beyond the design challenge, the user education that has to get done is, I mean, it just, it I don't envy the Instagram team for having so much of the success coming out of Meta's social products. I understand Facebook is still a gargantuan business, but Instagram is clearly where the sort of more bleeding edge interest lies. And the idea that they're in a position where their app is grown to a place where its users are, at least in this one example, confused about how to use it effectively as a communications tool, that to me is one of the reasons why I continue to think that on a long enough time scale, we're going to wind up with one of these things that makes sense. Michael McSweeney, The Block. Crypto bridging protocol multi-chain suspended service for multiple chains after being unable to contact its CEO to get server access during ongoing tech issues. If you're running a business and there's only one individual who can access certain resources that are mission critical to the business, crypto malarkey. Hayden Field, CNBC. OpenAI researchers say training AI with process supervision, which rewards the thought process rather than the outcome, could help prevent hallucinations. It sure sounds like it could help. I don't know when we should start measuring it, but I think it's fair to say that human beings have yet to sufficiently learn that we should reward thought process over outcomes. I hope that machines will be more effective and efficient at adopting that way of looking at solving a problem because, yeah, that's what you want. You want to reward the process so that when I ask the machine, when did Paul McCartney die? I'm going to get an accurate answer, not the answer that the machine thinks will most likely satisfy me. I use that example intentionally because it would not surprise me if there is a large language model somewhere that would give me a date and not Paul McCartney's still alive. What are you talking about? Julie Clover, Mac Rumors. Reddit client Apollo's developer says Reddit plans to charge $12,000 for 50 million API requests, and that he would need to pay $20 million per year to keep operating the app. I'm glad that the Apollo developer, their name escapes me, is sharing this story because if we want as a community or as a society for our social software to evolve and mature, the costs are going to need to become more transparent. I don't know whether the rate that Reddit is offering for their API is one that would turn API access into a profit center for the company, or whether it's simply passing on the business's own costs to the rest of the ecosystem. But in either case, it's clearly not tenable for a client that provides us a different experience for interacting with the same data set that's built by one person, to pay $20 million a year for access to the data set. That's not going to happen. And so the question then is Reddit still worth using if you have to use the first-party clients which provide the business with better means to monetize your usage of the tool? The other question, which is the more important one, more interesting one to me at least, is when we look to tools like ActivityPub, tools like Mastodon, tools like Blue Sky, tools like Nostr, if the protocol is fundamentally open, where do the choke points appear? It's a less than ideal metaphor, but imagine it as sort of a balloon. I'm borrowing this from, I think, Ben Thompson. Where you squeeze the balloon, the air moves in other directions. That point is where money is made. It's where you can commercialize the thing. And if the protocol that allows for little posts, little puffs of text and media that come from one author and are interacted with by n number of other actors, if that generalized concept of social media runs on top of a protocol that's fundamentally free, some other set of entities are going to appear in that ecosystem and provide some value in exchange for some other form of value, right? Gmail arguably captured the email protocol for consumers by providing meaningfully better utility than other email clients before. And in exchange, took in all that data and used it to feed its advertising machine. Say what you will about what you think of that trade-off, but the point is there was a trade-off. And Reddit, Twitter, Instagram hasn't made a move yet that I'm aware of, but I think most of this crop of first generation social tools, they're showing that it costs a significant amount of money to operate global scale services. So then the question becomes, if the global scale protocol is free, what services get built on top of it that are going to provide enough value add on top of what the protocol does for nothing that people are going to want to pay, right? The most obvious example here is media storage, right? The email protocol is free. The disk space required to house all the JPEGs that you attach to your emails, that costs somebody money somewhere. And it's not any different here. All of the media that Reddit hosts or that Twitter hosts costs real dollars. And even in a world where Blue Sky takes over everything, which is my personal vote, or anything else that looks like it, housing the content is going to cost someone something. The question is who, where, and when. Reuters sources: a planned $3 billion chip plant in India by ISMC, a consortium that included chipmaker Tower, has stalled due to the company's pending takeover by Intel. Related, the Financial Express. After getting 3 applicants in 2022, India opens new applications for setting up semiconductor and display fabs under its $10 billion chip incentive scheme. I don't remember when the last time you shopped for bed sheets was, but the phrase long staple Egyptian cotton comes to mind when I read a story like this. Cotton's made damn near anywhere, so far as I can tell. But the notion that some of the best cotton in the world comes from Egypt is baked pretty hard into my brain. It's a function of my, moment of life here on the little blue marble. And I think that chips, displays are on a similar path. I think it's probably better for geopolitical stability and the planet in general if we can spread the manufacture of the fundamental components of modern technology to as many parts of the world as possible. China should have its own chip industry, and Western Europe the European Union should have its own chip industry, and the United States should have its own chip and display industry. Like, the idea that all of these things are best made in one part of the world and then we'd have to move them everywhere else, I think the pandemic showed us that it's at least worth challenging that assumption and taking personal responsibility for developing the things that are fundamental from a technology point of view to one's business and well-being, which is Tim Cook's philosophy. So the idea that India wants semiconductors and displays to be built in India, I think is great. I just think it's going to be difficult to pick a winner, which may be a silly goal in the first place, right? But who's going to be the Egyptian cotton of semiconductors and displays? Displays, Korea, because Samsung. Semiconductors, the the Santa Clara County, because Apple, Intel, maybe somewhere else. We'll see. E.J. Dixon, Rolling Stone. A look at the grotesque world of AI true crime victim TikTok, where AI deepfakes based on images of children who were abused describe their own ghastly demise. We are not as evolved as we would like to think. Bloomberg. Elon Musk sent no tweets during his visit to China, the longest hiatus from the platform since June 2022. Once his jet left Shanghai, Musk tweeted about SpaceX. I wonder if we'll ever learn the real reason for this decision on Elon's part. If I had to just place chips on the table somewhere, how do you trust that your physical whereabouts aren't being monitored if you're using Twitter on your device, frankly, any device where your user profile has an active session in a country where, so far as you know, any and every industry can be manipulated by the state at the state's whim. If I were Elon, or if I were at the table contemplating what to do, I would raise that concern. I would say, hey, the moment you tweet from any terminal that's using the network infrastructure within the boundaries of the Chinese state, they're going to know where you are. And maybe they already do, but do we really need to give them up to the minute awareness of where you are? I don't know. Maybe it's a little tinfoil hat, but that's where my brain immediately jumped. And moreover, how long was this hiatus? Anybody going to care? Half the time when the guy tweets, everybody jumps up and down and talks about how we wish he would stop tweeting. Takes a break from tweeting. We need to talk about the break. Ben Lang, Road to VR. Ultraleap unveils the $140 hand tracking module Leap Motion 2. Its first since the original in 2013, with support for standalone headsets and opens pre-orders. I remember when the first Leap Motion device shipped, it looked fascinating. I mean, the demo, if you haven't seen it, it's worth going to see, because the idea of being able to control digital systems with just gestures of your hands in space, really cool. Will it find a home? I don't know. In 2013, it was a device that was meant to control, a computing machine that was sitting in front of you, where you already had a keyboard and a pointing device, and were probably actively using both of those things because you were using the computer. In this environment where you're going to wear goggles on your face, this might be even more useful, or significantly more useful than the other one, where the existing input controls for VR applications not quite as time tested, let's say. So I hope it works. Bloomberg. Tether's USDT circulation surpasses its 83.2 billion all-time high, recovering the $20 billion lost after Terra USD imploded in 2022, even as crypto trading volumes drop. Good for Tether. As I said, on Tuesday, getting to a place where cryptocurrency is something that can be used in the same pedestrian, sort of Richard Scarry applications of, my bike got a flat tire. I'm going to pay somebody to change the flat. What am I going to pay them in? Today, it's fiat currency 9 times out of 10. Maybe Tether will be one of the businesses that helps us get to a place where I have other options. But beyond that, not a lot to say. Bloomberg, evident at some banks, about 40% of all open job roles are AI related. JP Morgan advertised 3,651 AI related roles from February 2023 through April 2023. Yeah, if you're an existing financial institution, I imagine you're looking at the developments in AI with great excitement, because what you have to get machines to do is, at least in theory, on rails, regulated rails. And so looking to software to get you greater efficiencies there, whether that means by taking advantage of human resources who can leverage AI, or replacing those human resources with some form of software, is going to be of great interest to banks, because if there's one thing that banks understand, it's that every little bit of efficiency counts. Financial Times. As ASML reaches around a 275 billion euro market cap, twice that of Intel, a look at the fundamental limits on making ever smaller chips, which could finally end Moore's Law. I remember the end of Moore's Law being called for at least once in the last 20 years. So maybe we're right this time. We're definitely pushing the boundaries of physics. It'll be especially interesting. This is one of those long bet things for me. In my lifetime, if Moore's Law ends, where do we find greater capability and efficiency in semiconductors? Is there something else to be done, or are we going to hit a hard threshold and I don't know what? How is the industry going to change if it becomes a law of nature that you won't get faster chips every 18 months, which is what we've built this industry on since I was born. Carolyn O'Donovan, Washington Post. Hundreds of white-collar Amazon workers in Seattle walked off the job, frustrated by job losses, a return to office mandate, carbon emissions, and leadership. None of these employees are unionized, to my knowledge. There's not nearly the same protections for workers under an employment contract in the United States as there are in other parts in the world. So the idea of walking off the job because you disagree with the way your employer is conducting their various aspects of their business is a novel thing. That said, the phrase white collar is doing a lot of work here. Something tells me a significant percentage of the people who walked off the job at Amazon can afford to lose that job and are desirable enough in the job market that they might not struggle to find a different job in the event that Amazon were to let them go. So I'm glad that they did it, because any instance where, you know, the civic organism stands up for itself, I think is a good thing. But on the other hand, I don't see a lot of Amazon blue collar workers walking off the job or otherwise organizing or agitating for better working conditions, in part because they probably would just be fired, and they can't afford to be in America in 2023, the greatest country on earth. Financial Times investigation of 14 laptops with trackers given to United Kingdom retailers to recycle. 10 were recycled correctly, others were sold, likely stolen, or took long journeys. If you're in the editorial board at the Financial Times and someone comes to you and says, hey, we're going to do an investigation on what happens when a consumer recycles their laptop, and you go, okay, great, go do it. And then that person comes back and says, okay, I did the investigation. Here's the first draft of the story. And the story is you tracked 14 laptops. Like, how do you publish this? Like, it's not to say that it's not interesting, but the idea that tracking the whereabouts of 14 laptops in all of the United Kingdom is somehow indicative of anything? How many laptops are recycled in the United Kingdom every day? My guess is it's at least an order of magnitude more of that, possibly 2 or 3 orders of magnitude more than that. It wouldn't surprise me. 10,000 laptops a day? Okay, maybe that's a bit much. But 1,000 laptops a day? Maybe not a day, but on average over the course of a week? Yeah, that doesn't seem crazy. But 14, that's enough for you to say, like, hey, this is really interesting. You should give this your limited time and attention. Jessica Brzezinski, Fast Company. Match Group plans to launch gay dating app Archer in NYC, LA, and DC in the coming months. The company's first gay-specific app for men. Cool, good, help people find and make meaningful connection. It's the thing that furthers the species, even if those people aren't capable of biologically procreating. The idea, though, that the Match Group would ship this story and talk about shipping this app in the coming months, when this is the first day of Pride Month, it just seems like a missed opportunity, my dudes. Financial Times. KPMG, Cotu, VC firm Headline, and other investors are using AI to help pick acquisition targets and startups for investment, hoping for an edge over rivals. The fact that this story also comes from the Financial Times today, it's starting to feel like it was just a thin news day in their newsroom. Of course, investment firms are going to try and utilize state-of-the-art technology to identify potential business objectives. It's not surprising. Is reading about this going to inform anyone who's in this business? in a way that wasn't already sort of obvious to them. Like, I kind of doubt it, but I don't know. I'm not a finance dick. Isabel Bosquet, Wall Street Journal. Some IT executives say generative AI lowers the barrier for code creation, which could result in growing levels of complexity, technical debt, and confusion. Yeah, I have no doubt that by making it easier to code, one of the potential outcomes is an increase in less than ideal code. I also believe that the people who are most capable engineers, which is to say coders in this context, will be able to do more with less given the same set of tools. So does that mean that things balance out? I don't know, but that's what I would guess. Does it also mean that identifying those who are entry level coders and choosing whether to equip them with the tools necessary to improve their skills and therefore improve their value to the organization, or encourage them to seek other forms of employment? I think the tools are going to help with that too. So, yeah, will there be technical debt and confusion? I'm sure. That's what, quite frankly, keeps the software industry going. If there weren't technical debt or confusion or growing levels of complexity, a lot fewer people would have jobs. Aria Al-Malhode, TechCrunch. LA and Bengaluru-based hyperspectral imagery startup Pixel raised a $36 million Series B led by Google after launching 3 demonstration satellites in 2022. I am entirely unfamiliar with hyperspectral imagery, but the idea that it uses satellites to create imagery is certainly worth learning a little more about. And a $36 million Series B seems like a modest raise, but that's the venture environment we operate in these days. So, okay, cool. Amanda Sieberling, TechCrunch. BeReal plans to launch a chat feature, initially testing in Ireland. Users will be able to message one-on-one, send a private BeReal, and react with real emoji. I'm always reticent to quote that infamous statement about Apple from Michael Dell, but this feels like a reasonable time to do it. And again, maybe all I'll do is show my age. The fact that I know the quote off the top of my head and the fact that I'm going to use it in this context. BeReal should shut down operations and give its money back to its investors. I do not see where this tool is going to make meaningful inroads into an already crowded environment and be able to become any form of profitable enterprise without falling back on some user hostile business practice.